She stepped off the stagecoach expecting a husband, but when she saw the man waiting, wide-shouldered and silent, she ran without a word. What no one knew was that her younger sister would take her place at the ranch, and by the time the truth came riding in with a loaded gun, it was already too late to turn back. The stagecoach rumbled down the dirt road, wheels creaking like old bones, dust trailing behind it in mournful ribbons. The sun was a bruised red on the horizon, sinking slow behind a jagged ridge of hills. The wind carried the dry scent of sage and something older, earth-long unslept, land that watched without blinking. A single rider waited at the fork in the road, slouched forward like a mountain that breathed. She stepped down when the coach halted. Boots touched ground, and the sound felt louder than it should have in the silence. Her dress, simple but pressed, fluttered just slightly in the breeze, and her gloved hands trembled around the handle of a worn leather suitcase. She scanned the barren spread ahead, the broken fence line, the cattle barely visible in the far pasture, the ranch house hunched under a leaning roof. Her gaze met the man waiting for her. He was large. That was the first thing, and maybe the only thing, she noticed with clarity. His hat shaded most of his face, but the width of his shoulders, the heavy set of his belly straining against a worn leather belt, the silence with which he stood, it all pressed on her like heat. There was no welcome in his eyes, though there was no threat either. Just an unbearable stillness. She had seen men like that before. Men who had carried too much and forgotten how to set it down. He nodded once. She did not smile. The coach rattled away behind her, leaving only wheel scars in the dirt and a fresh absence. She adjusted the grip on her suitcase and followed him toward the house. The ranch house smelled of wood smoke and dust. No flowers. No hint of anything domestic. A rifle leaned against the wall just inside the door. She noticed how his boots didn't scrape against the floorboards. He moved quiet for a man his size. Dinner was stew. Thick, gray, and silent. The only sound was the ticking of a mantel clock and the rasp of spoons against tin. She kept her eyes on her bowl, but she felt his eyes on her, curious, guarded, maybe even disappointed. She hated herself for wondering. He wasn't what she expected either. She'd imagined fat meant softness. Instead, he looked carved from burden. He finally spoke. Name. She didn't lift her head. Same as in the letters. He nodded. Took another bite. It might have gone on like that the whole night, if not for the scraping in her chest, the word she had swallowed since she stepped down from that stage. I can't stay. He didn't answer. The ticking clock filled the space her words left. She pushed her chair back. Stood. Her hands clutched the fabric at her sides as if it might anchor her. I thought I could do this. But I can't. I thought. She bit down hard. It isn't about you. Still, nothing from him. I'm sorry. At last he moved. Slow. Deliberate. He stood, towering but not menacing, and walked to the door. He opened it. The wind slapped in and scattered a few embers from the fireplace. Barn's open, he said. Your horses still saddled. She hesitated. That's it. His voice was soft gravel. Ain't no chain on your ankle. You go when you please. She stared a second longer, searching his face for anger, sorrow, even relief. But he gave her nothing. Just the open door and a quiet kind of dignity. Outside, the moon had risen low and pale. Coyotes howled somewhere to the west, high and sad, like something broken singing. She walked the dirt path to the barn, boots crunching against gravel, her suitcase bumping against her thigh with every step. She didn't cry. Not then. But her throat burned. She rode out before the morning sun had found the hills. She didn't look back until the ranch was only a smudge behind her, and even then, it wasn't the house she looked at. It was the man who didn't try to stop her. Back in Kansas, the younger sister read the letter with fingers that trembled. She sat on the edge of a narrow iron bed, the only light coming from a gas lamp flickering low in the corner. The letter was short, written in a hard, angular hand. No sentiment, just a sentence and a name. She didn't speak aloud, just folded the paper twice, tight, and pressed it to her chest. Then she opened the trunk at the foot of the bed. Inside was a dress. Not hers. Not quite. But it would fit. A different fit for a different kind of girl. The wind outside the window picked up, shaking the panes. Somewhere far from that room, a man fed horses before sunrise, shoulders bent against the cold. He did not speak of the woman who had left, nor the emptiness her silence left behind. But the land remembered. It always did. The second time a woman stepped off the stagecoach, the wind was harsher. No soft haze of twilight this time, just a bright, unforgiving sun that bleached the prairie to bone and shadow. She stepped down with one hand on the rail, and the other around a leather bag that looked older than she was. Her boots met the earth like she belonged to it. He was there again. Same place. Same silence. His hat tilted low, casting his eyes in shade. His shirt was sweat-damp under the arms, and he leaned heavier on one leg than the other, as if something in his body had started to turn against him. She looked him straight on, chin up. There was a flicker of recognition behind her eyes, like she'd seen him before, but only from a photograph or through someone else's story. For a second, something passed between them, invisible but sharp. He didn't speak. She smiled. Not wide, not warm. Just enough to say she wasn't afraid. "Hope I ain't too late," she said, voice light as dust. "No," he said after a beat. "You're right on time." He didn't say her name. She didn't offer it. They both moved forward like dancers who had practiced the steps in a dream. In the house, she hung her coat by the door and scanned the space like she already knew where everything would be. The rifle, the hearth, the lonely coat hook, the silent corners. She touched nothing, but she took it all in. "I'll cook tonight," she said, peeling off her gloves. "If that's all right." He looked at her then, really looked. She saw it in his posture, how something behind his ribs shifted. He didn't nod, didn't grunt. Just walked out, the door creaking behind him. She boiled potatoes, salted them like she meant it, cut meat with the precision of someone used to stretching thin things. The kitchen warmed with scent and heat, and when he came back in, shirt dark with sweat and dirt under his fingernails, he paused at the threshold. It was the same dress, the one the other sister had worn. He noticed, even if he didn't speak of it. But this woman wore it differently. Less like she was trying to impress, more like it was a uniform. The waist fit tighter, the sleeves rolled up. No brooch, no lace, just the work. They ate without much talk, but it wasn't the same silence. Hers was filled with little hums under her breath, the occasional scrape of chair legs as she adjusted her seat. She didn't fidget, but she moved, alive in the space, like she intended to stay. After supper, she stepped outside with a tin cup and looked at the horizon. Her breath caught a little at the view. The land stretched forever, untamed and aching. The wind whipped her hair loose and filled the silence with a low hum. He joined her after a time. The boards creaked beneath his weight, and for a while they stood side by side, saying nothing. "Why out here?" she asked at last, her voice softer now. "Most men send for a wife, 'cause they're lonely. But you don't seem like someone who minds being alone." "I don't," he said. "But the land's too big for one man. And winter don't care how tough you are." She nodded, then took a sip. Her eyes never left the line where sky met ground. He looked at her again, the wind catching her skirt, the way she held herself like someone who'd learned not to trust chairs that might break under her. Something about her didn't fit the letters. The rhythm of her speech. The way she hadn't flinched at the barn full of half-butcher hides or the dog with one ear. And that smile at the coach station, more grit than grace. But he didn't ask. She didn't confess. That night, as coyotes howled farther off than usual, she found the room that had been hers in theory, hers by arrangement. She unpacked slowly. One dress, a pair of worn riding gloves, a half-empty flask, a book with half its spine gone. She opened the drawer beside the bed and slid in the small envelope she'd kept folded in her bodice the whole ride. A letter never sent. The one her sister left behind. She laid down on the thin mattress and stared at the ceiling until the candle guttered. The next morning, she was up before the rooster. She didn't ask where things were, just found the well, fetched water, started coffee. He watched from a porch, arms crossed, chest rising slow. By midday, she'd mended the back fence with baling wire, scared off a snake with a shovel, and swore louder than a preacher's drunk brother when she stepped in cow dung. He chuckled once, a short, surprised sound that startled even him. She turned, wiped sweat from her brow. "Didn't think you could laugh. Didn't think you could swear," he said back. "You don't know me," she said. "No," he agreed. "I don't." And they let it sit there, thick and humming. That night, after supper in silence, she pulled a chair up to the fire and pulled off her boots. He sat across from her, a whittling knife in one hand, though the piece of wood it worked had long lost its shape. The fire threw long shadows up the wall, flickering like old ghosts. "You really want a wife?" she asked. His eyes flicked up. "You already a skin out of it?" "No. Just wondering what kind of man sends for one, waits all that time, then lets her walk." He said nothing. The wind picked up outside, moaning through the chinks in the boards. The answer came slow, as if he chewed each word before spitting it out. She wasn't ready for this place. Weren't her fault. But the land don't bend for no one. Not even a bride. She watched the fire for a while. Then, "And me?" His voice was nearly a whisper. Still deciding. The silence that followed didn't ache like the one before. It just lingered, quiet and honest. Later, when she lay in bed again, awake and thinking, she heard the boards creak outside her door. Heavy steps. A pause. Then nothing. Just the house settling. Just the wind breathing. And in the drawer beside her, the letter her sister had written, never signed, never sent, waited like a secret burning through the wood. The dust showed before the man did. A tight funnel kicked up along the south trail, stirring loose gravel and brittle grass. She stood on the porch, hands still damp from scrubbing blood off a calf's leg, and narrowed her eyes against the wind. The rider moved like a nail driving itself forward. Rigid spine, hungry gait. No hat. Black coat. Saddlebag slung high like it held something more than clothes. The rancher stepped out behind her. He didn't say a word, just followed her line of sight. The two of them watched as the stranger drew closer, the sun flattening shadows behind him. When he reached the gate, he didn't dismount. Just sat there with a grin stitched into his face, all wrong in its shape. "I'm looking for a girl," he called, voice slick as oil. "Name don't matter. She goes by many." She felt her knees stiffen. Her jaw clenched before her mind caught up. She took one small step back, but the rancher noticed. The stranger's gaze flicked between them. "Didn't expect you to be the welcoming type," he said to the rancher. "But maybe you're just the silent kind." The rancher's voice came low. "What's your business?" The man swung a leg over his horse and landed hard in the dirt. A faint limp. His boots were city-made, too clean for the trail. "I'd call it personal," he said, eyes settling on her. "She owes me. Left without paying her share. Took something, too. Precious little thing." She felt the burn of old panic, low and sour in her stomach. Her fingers found the hem of her apron, twisting it. The rancher didn't look at her. He looked at the man. Long and flat. "You a lawman?" he asked. The man smiled wider. "Law's got long arms, but they don't stretch out here. I'm just a man with a grudge and a damn good memory." The rancher shifted. "We don't host grudges. Or ghosts." The man tipped an invisible hat, mock respectful. "Won't stay long. Just need a word with the lady." Her voice cracked when it came. "You can say whatever you have to right here." The grin faded from his face. "You always were stubborn. That was your sister's curse, too." Her hands trembled now. He wasn't bluffing. He knew. Not just who she was, who she wasn't. "I ain't looking for trouble," she said. "Trouble followed you, sweetheart," he answered. "That's how it always goes with women who lie." The rancher finally turned to her. Not with judgment. Just the question he hadn't asked since she arrived. She took a breath that scraped her lungs. "Back east. I made some poor choices. Took what I thought was owed to me. He thinks I belong to him. I don't." The man snorted. "You don't belong anywhere, girl. You play house, you run, and you ruin." The rancher didn't flinch. "You said your piece. Now ride." The man's smile returned, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "You keep her," he said, nodding toward her. "But I'll be back. And next time, I won't ask polite." He mounted with effort. A knee that didn't bend right. a scar that pulled under his collar. She watched him right away, eyes narrowed to slits. The dust swallowed him again, but the fear remained, trailing after him like smoke. Inside, she sat at the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. He stood in the doorway. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have let me stay if I had?" He thought for a moment. Then, yes. She looked up. "I don't scare easy," he said. "And I don't turn out people who bled. I didn't just bleed. I stole, lied, took her place. I figured. You did. You don't mend fence like someone who was raised soft." They both smiled. A slow, tired kind of smile. The kind that knows the weight of mistakes. "I didn't plan on it," she whispered. "Taking her place. I got the letter. I knew she wasn't coming back. I needed to get away from what I'd done. I thought if I could just get here, start over." "Don't explain," he said gently. "You're here. That's enough." They sat in the hush, the air between them thick, not heavy. "I didn't know he'd follow me," she said. "He won't get a second chance." She looked at him, really looked, and saw what others probably never did in that wide frame and quiet mouth. The steadiness. The unspoken promise. "I don't want to run again," she said. "Then don't." That night, she didn't sleep. Not fully. Every creak in the floorboard was a memory. Every gust of wind a whisper from back east. But she didn't pack a bag. Didn't touch the door. She lay in the dark, fists clenched, and chose not to flee. In the barn, the rancher fed the horses by lamplight. One hand on a bale hook, the other nursing a slow ache in his shoulder. He knew what it meant when men came with nothing but names and unfinished business. He'd once been one of them. The dog barked once. Then silence. In the drawer by her bed, the letter her sister had left behind shifted with the wind. The corner of it curled like it was listening. The dust would settle by morning. But not the danger. That still had a name. And it wasn't done writing. The sun hadn't yet cleared the ridgeline when the ranch dog growled low in its throat. The woman stirred from a floor where she'd slept, fully clothed and stiff from waiting. The rancher was already outside. His silhouette moved slow along the porch, shotgun balanced loosely in his arms. The air held that brittle stillness that comes before lightning. Nothing moved, but everything felt ready to shatter. The rider came from the north this time. Not the trail. Just a cut across wild scrub and dried creeks. A short path for someone in a hurry. He wore the same black coat, but dust clung to it now. A second gun rode on his hip. This wasn't a visit. It was a reckoning. She stepped out barefoot, boots forgotten. Apron tied tight around her waist like a holster. The wind caught her hair, unbraided and sharp across her cheeks. Her eyes found the rancher's. He gave a slow nod, and she understood. No more hiding. No more borrowed names. The rider halted 10 feet from a porch. "Told you I'd be back," he said. "Didn't figure on you, inviting a crowd." The rancher lifted the shotgun but didn't raise it. "You're done talking. You turn around now, or you ride back on your back." The man grinned, teeth flashing like a broken lantern. "You think she's worth dying over?" The rancher didn't answer. She stepped forward. "I never stole what you say I did. But maybe I stole peace, and maybe I stole time. You want to punish someone? Fine. But you don't get to make me afraid anymore." The rider chuckled. "You think you can talk me down?" "No," she said. "I think I've lived through worse." He moved first. Not with a shout or a threat, just a twitch of his fingers, a shift in his hip. But the rancher was ready. The shotgun roared once, a deafening crack that rolled across the prairie like thunder. The man staggered, but stayed up. The shot caught his shoulder, not center. He dove behind his horse as she sprinted for the barn. Glass shattered behind her, the window above the sink. He was shooting now, wild and fast, breaking what little stillness the house ever owned. The rancher ducked low and disappeared inside. She burst through the barn doors, heart hammering. The revolver was in the saddlebag. She grabbed it, checked the cylinder. 5 rounds. Her fingers trembled. She'd never fired at anything that bled and could fire back. But she had no time to learn slow. Hoofbeats thudded behind her. He'd mounted again. She swung the barn door wide and stepped into the light. He rode fast, trying to circle the house, Get behind. She fired once. Missed. Twice. The horse reared. He tumbled off, landing hard in the dust. The third shot she saved. The rancher came out limping, blood darkening his side. He held the pistol now. More precise. His eyes locked on the man crawling for cover behind the feed trough. "Don't," she said, stepping between them. The rancher froze. "He'll come back." "No," she said. "He won't." The rider groaned, arm bent wrong, blood pouring from his side now, too fast to mend. "You got what you came for," she said, voice low. "You took your pound of flesh. Now die with it." He looked at her, no rage left, just surprise. Then something close to regret. He slumped against the wood, breath rattling. They watched him go. Later, the barn smoked but didn't catch. The fire had licked up a haystack before dying on its own. She helped him back to the house, wrapped a clean bandage around his waist while he grunted and refused to flinch. "You should have let me finish him," he said. "No," she answered. "You gave me a place. I had to keep it clean." He leaned back, breathing hard. "You're not who you pretended to be." "I never was." He looked at her. "That a good thing?" "It's a true thing." Outside, the land soaked in the blood and the silence. The wind moved low across the grass, no longer a scream, but a whisper. A hush. Not peace, but something close enough to breathe in. The next morning, they buried him near the tree line. Not out of honor, but necessity. She marked the grave with no name. "I won't run again," she said, once the dirt was flat. He didn't reply, just squeezed her shoulder. A month later, the porch had a new chair. The fence stayed mended. The cattle moved slow in the pasture. No more strangers came down the trail. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her, eyes unreadable but steady. She never asked what he saw. Sometimes, in the quiet of dusk, she'd take the letter from her sister out of the drawer and read it aloud to the wind. She never burned it, never buried it. The name she'd used when she arrived no longer felt like a lie. It felt like something worn in, softened by use. A story passed down until it fit. When he said her name one evening, her real name, he said it gently, like it had never been used in anger. Like it belonged to the land now. She looked up from the stove and nodded once. The past hadn't vanished, but it no longer had the power to chase her. She had stayed. She had bled. She had chosen. And the land had answered back.